Thanks so much. I'm Andrea Grover at University of Nebraska at Omaha, having a fun morning today. And I'm going to tell you about why I would like to see more spam. So first of all, our team came together through interesting conversations over a Dungeons and Dragons table. Matt and I put together our mutual interests in citizen science and cybersecurity and came up with a project focused on phishing. We have a couple of doc students who have actually made all the things happen. And what we came up with is a project that we call Fishy Findings. And what people do in this project, which is hosted on the Zooniverse platform for image annotation and classification, is they're presented an image of either an email or website. It's always in a Gmail frame. And they are given several different categories that they can use to annotate the image. In this case, I've selected invalid domain or sender and drawn a bounding box around the email address of the sender because Discover Card would never send me an email from creditcard.com. Right? After they complete this portion of the task, they have to answer two Likert scale items. One is how trustworthy did you find the contents of the image? This gives us an indicator of whether they would have been victimized or not. And how visually pleasing it is, because aesthetics impact people's assessment of trustworthiness. And this also lets us kind of calibrate to other data sets. So our goals, basically understanding how well this population compares to another data set that we had with Fortune 500 employees, which gives us an indicator of how far we can take crowdsourcing as a resource in cybersecurity behavioral research, whether we can find some systematic biases that could be targeted with training, whether volunteers' accuracy improves with practice and exposure, and basically what else we can learn from the crowd, because crowdsourcing research as a method for cybersecurity is pretty rare. So what we came up with here was amazing to watch it unfold. In January, we launched this, and within 7 days, about 1,400 people had rendered over 30,000 classifications and completely retired our entire data set that took months to assemble. We've got some initial insights. These have not otherwise been shared yet. So when it comes to the question about how the volunteers compare to corporate employees, you can see that there's a lot more data from the volunteers, but overall, our various stats are indicating a similar performance despite some differences in the task structure, which is really exciting. There is a slightly lower performance in some respects, which we think is attributable to the lack of formalized training and feedback. Some other interesting insights come from that other Fishy Findings label that was at the bottom. That pops up a free text box for people to tell us what raised a red flag for them. And we got so many responses on those 1,800 odd images. We had 5,600 free text annotations. Over 70% were on malicious content. When they were false positives, it was actually on the kind of thing that people should have an eye out for, like inconsistencies in the details. And that's a good thing for people to watch for, but it happens on legit sites too. So lots of fun quotes, things about like, the kind of messaging that websites provide, the kind of advertising that makes you look suspicious, and the use of Comic Sans as totally undermining your credibility. There were multiple comments about Comic Sans. We've also found some really interesting things in terms of volunteers highlighting cues from the taxonomy that we didn't embed in the task because we wanted to keep a limited set of annotation types to keep the task tractable. So visual indicators of security were very frequently mentioned. They have also highlighted new types of cues that weren't in our pre-existing taxonomies, and we're super excited about this. Things like mixed languages used on the same website, which should be a cue that something's a little off, right? And for this audience, the influence for Google is just kind of incredible in the data set, particularly because sometimes people who are doing phishing use a Google form to try to solicit credentials. And there is a handy dandy footer message that many people are like, oh yeah, I shouldn't use my password in this. And that, like, people have learned. It's kind of impressive. So basically, to move up, we need more spam. This initial corpus development took forever. It is actually really hard to get realistic phishing images. And so what we need is images of both phishing and legit content that are real, not faked. And we need them for both email and websites across a variety of contexts and industries. There is a whole IP thing with this too, which is why we used Internet Archive in particular to protect Zooniverse from any concerns around IP, issues. And So permissions are kind of an important piece of it. So if you have ideas for us on how we can scale up our corpus and any ideas around funding, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks.